Hello, welcome to White Threads FlossTube number 49. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I thought I'd tell you a bit of a long-winded story which goes some way to answering a question that I've had for many years. And the question is, if people in times past worked on 60 to 100 count linen, embroidery this is, obviously, that's what I talk about. When did they do this? How did they have enough light to see that sort of count with? When we, who have artificial lighting, electric lighting, still find it difficult to see counts like that. So let me take you back to, in 2006, I went to the US to visit the Ukrainian Museum in New York, so that I could do my research for my book, Ukrainian Drawn Thread Embroidery. We also did a family holiday at the same time, and one of the lovely things that we did was travel north up to Quebec from New York and then back again. And we visited a place in Massachusetts called the Hancock Shaker Village, and it was a working museum which showed life as it would have been basically on a farm in times past, and well, maybe not just a farm but a village. There were things like there was a schoolroom that my daughters went into and had a class. They were very, very young at the time, and I tried out some weaving, as did one of my daughters, with a fake cow. My daughters tried out milking a cow, and so there were all these sorts of experiences that we got to have, which would be things that we wouldn't necessarily experience in our everyday lives, and we got to see how kitchens and houses and barns and things were set up in those sorts of places in times past. So it was absolutely fascinating, and because you got to experience the things, it was so much more interesting than just going and looking at stuff. So fast forward some years to when I did my trip to Norway the first time to research for early style hardanger. I went to the Norsk Folkemuseum to look at the things that they had there, and they also have a little, well, basically village of buildings that they've brought from around the country and set them up as they would have been in as much of their natural environment and natural way as they possibly could. So it was beautiful in summer at the time that I went, and I was able to wander through this little village and into some of the buildings and see what they were like, and see the things like the fact that if they had any windows at all, they weren't large and they didn't have many. So it was actually quite dark inside these buildings. And it made me wonder, how did they have enough light to see their embroidery? And then back in 2015, 2016, over Christmas time, we went to Europe to visit some family. And after that, we travelled north and we went to Scandinavia, to Sweden and Denmark. We also went to Estonia and Finland. But the thing that jumps out to me today about this sort of thing is that in Stockholm, we went to Skansen, which is a similar sort of thing. Again, it's a working museum with buildings set up in their old style. I'd say they've been brought from around the country and reconstructed there. And you can walk around this little village and see the various shops that they might have had in a village, and you can go into some of the houses. And so we went into one of the houses, and there were a couple of musicians in there playing some traditional music on traditional instruments, and I got to see the lady's beautiful traditional clothing that she was also wearing, so I got a couple of sneaky photographs of the embroidery on that. But in one of the other houses that we went into, there was someone who was giving a bit of an explanation about candles. I can't remember, she possibly showed a demonstration of dipping candles to create them. I just think that, I don't have any photographic evidence of that, we didn't take any photos in there, but I just seem to remember that that's what she was doing. And she talked about the fact that candles would have been very expensive and they would have only been used for special occasions. And so over time, I've put together all of this information about these little dark buildings and the fact that candles were expensive, so they probably would have used firelight to see inside at night time. And I have wondered. I have also wondered, because I went to Utne, which is on the Hardanger Fjord in Norway, and I went to the Hardanger Folk Museum there, and they have a similar setup there. I didn't go and visit all of the little buildings there because I was spending too much time looking at the embroidery, but they have it there. And around the Hardanger Fjord, what the people did was, well, it's an orchard area, so they were fruit growing, and so they would have been in summer out working in their fields, in their orchards, and then in winter, because we're talking about Norway here, it would have actually been very dark most of the time. So I presume that most of their embroidery would have had to been done in the summer, because there probably wasn't enough light in the winter. But in the summer they were busy working, so when did they get the chance? And it just hasn't made sense to me when they might have done this embroidery, but also this very, very fine embroidery for which they will have needed to see exceptionally well. So yesterday I thought, I'm going to ask Kari-Anne Pedersen, who is the Textiles Curator at the Norsk Folkemuseum, my question. So I wrote to her and I asked her, and I said, I have a question I've been pondering for a long time. In times past, when there was no electricity, how did embroiderers see to stitch on 60 to 100 count linen? My guess is that during the daylight hours, they were outside working or doing housework inside. So stitching time would have been in the evening, but they would have had no electricity and surely not enough light in the summer evenings to stitch by. Candles would have only been for special occasions, and firelight would have been too dark. So how? Kari-Anne was very kind to reply to me, and she said, young girls would have work taking care of the animals outside in summer, and a lot of work was done where you had to watch the fire, for example, while you made cheese or other activities in daylight. I think a lot of work done was combined with other tasks. Also remember, some women were probably quite professional, as this was one of the few things they could earn money on. So that helped to explain to me when they would have had the chance to do this embroidery. And if it was girls, then they would have had younger eyes, and it would possibly therefore have been easier for them to see this very fine count of fabric that they were using. And for those professional embroiderers, that makes sense too, that they would have dedicated the time to work on these things because that was their way of earning some income. So thank you very much to Kari-Anne for helping me to understand what a question that has bugged me for such a long time. So perhaps that's been something you've wondered about too, and that's helped you out as well. So thank you for this little walk down memory lane that I've had today, enjoying some of the holiday experiences that we've had over the years, usually for the purpose of me going somewhere to do my research. In fact, only one of them wasn't, all the others were. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would love it if you did, and I will see you next time. Bye.